Hello, everyone. Welcome to Financial Literacy for Business Owners. It is so very good to see you. My name is Mark Dolfini. You don't care. That's okay. Because you're here not to see me, but and see my shining face, but you are here because you want to learn to be a little bit more financially literate. We've already got some people burning up the comment section. It is very good to see you. Please let me know where you're at, where you're from, and also what line of work that you're in as well. I do usually put that in there, but what line of work are you in? So that way, this really is financial literacy for business owners. So if you are a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're any sort of interest in business of your own, this is what I'm going to be teaching you today. And just a quick note, we'll talk about that here in just a second, but I've got a few people who remarked that I've got a money and finance boot camp coming up, which is a 3-hour event. Plus, it's going to have some pretty cool bonuses and extras in there. I'm going to talk about that here in a hot second, but let's get to some of the comment section right here. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and delete the stream on Facebook because it is not likey what I'm trying to do here. All right. Sorry, Facebook. You are removed. Okay, there we go. All right, so I've got a couple people already. Evelyn, hello. I'm Rita from Kenya. Very good. Looking forward to this. Excellent. Very good. I'm glad to have you here, Rita. Um, Excellent. And let's see, we've got is it Cecilia? There we go. Cecilia is from Illinois and work in retail, not a business owner, but you want to be. Hey, Cecilia, that's okay. And you know what? I give you a ton of credit for being here, even not being a business owner, but you want to be financially literate. Look, there are going to be things that are going to be specific to business owners here, and understanding balance sheets, understanding income statements, and certain metrics that are really important for you to know. But I give you a lot of credit, Cecilia, for wanting to learn this stuff up front, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of folks who really struggle to just understand what's going on in their business. It's like going on a diet, but not owning a scale, or going on a diet to lose weight, but not owning a way to measure your progress. That's exactly what it's like. It's like driving a speedboat in the fog, not understanding your finances. And it's really not hard. It's not difficult, because people are like, oh, that's easy for you. You're a numbers person. No, I'm not. I may have a degree in accounting. However, I also graduated almost dead last in my high school. Like, I tell people I was in the top 98% of my class because the bottom 2% sounds really bad. So yeah, and the reason why, and I bombed all my math classes, mostly because I wasn't really paying attention. But but one I want you to understand, and if I say this once, I'm going to say it's worth saying a few times. Accounting and bookkeeping and finances, it's not about numbers. It's about rules. And if you can understand the basics of rules, you can understand all this. So I'm just saying, like, good for you for being here and learning this stuff right now. So we've got Donna from Natchez. I'm going to say that's Mississippi, right? I'm going to go with that. All right. Well, it's good to have you here, Donna. Thank you for joining me today. And we've got a participant from the moon. I told you, I'm getting ready to go intergalactic. So thank you for joining me on the moon. I think I remember you, Hans. I think you're from Africa, maybe? Okay. Well, anyway, regardless, you're on the moon. Congratulations. All right. So we've got currently in Florida from Chi-Town. Shaq, I'm about 2 hours south of Chicago in Lafayette, Indiana. And I will tell you, stay in Florida, at least until it warms up. Although it's been a little bit warmer, but my gosh, we had a brutal winter. So it's good. Glad you could join me, Shaq. All right. So let's get to it. We got a bunch of people joining. If you are joining here and you're just just coming in, please let me know who you are, where you're from, and maybe if you are in business for yourself, what line of work that you're interested in. That way I can kind of make this more relevant to you. So one thing I want to talk about real quick is the Money and Finance Business Owner Bootcamp. I'm just gonna put this out there now. This bootcamp is different from what I'm gonna be teaching today. It's gonna be this plus a lot of other stuff. So it's gonna be 3 hours. It's gonna be on the 21st of March. And if you're not able to make it, that's okay, because there will be a replay. But here's what I'm gonna offer you. If you sign up today, okay? If you sign up today, meaning before midnight Eastern time, don't come to me tomorrow and be like, hey, can I sign up? If you sign up tonight, I will give you a free coaching session in addition to that. So I'm just saying, if you do that, I like to reward action takers. If you do, that bonus stands for today. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the comments section now. So if you guys are interested, you can sign up for that through Eventbrite. And there's a bunch of other bonuses that are also included, including access to the course, the Money and Finance, the Money and Finance video course. That's the advanced course. You get you will get access to that as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and we've got, let me see, where'd you go here? I got way too many tabs open. There we go. Does anybody else have like 38 tabs? I don't know if there's a limit, but I think there should be, because I always push that limit. All right, very good. Shaq is saying will do. Yeah, stay where you're at, because it is way better. All right, Rebecca from Texas, and work with small business and customization, apparel, promotional items. Oh, that's super cool. I love that. And I love Texas. Love me some Texas. All right, fantastic. Good to have you here, Rebecca. All right, so thank you so much for joining me. We are here learning about the Money and Finance Business Owner. It's a Money and Finance Business course. Really, it's about being financially literate. So let's get to the agenda right away. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, and I want to try to land the plane about an hour from now. So again, for those of you who signed up on Eventbrite, yes, you will get the replay. And so in case you're going to ask, and if anybody asks and types in later, will I get the replay on this? Go ahead and let them know in case I missed the comment. But also put in there, if you have any questions along the way, type out your questions. Don't say, what did that mean? Because it might be 3 minutes later and I'm going to look at it and say, I'm not going to know which that you mean. So be specific in your questions. I will stick around and answer as many questions as I possibly can, but I do want to put the fries in the bag in about 60 minutes from now. So let's keep this rock and rolling. The agenda we're going to be talking about, first, we're talking about the Viper methodology, the Viper framework, which is about a systematic way to construct your business and your life. I'm a life and business strategist, and that is what's important to me. So we're going to be talking about the Viper framework. We'll be talking about the 4 core functions of business. They have to be true in every single business. And then we're going to dig into the financial statements. We're going to get into balance sheets and income statements, P&Ls. We're going to talk about all that stuff and what those specific things mean. And then you're going to be like, dude, where's my cash? Where's all my cash going? For those of you who have been in business for a while, or even 25 minutes, you're like, oh my gosh, I just made X amount of dollars. Where did all my cash go? Especially if you're in a growing enterprise, because a growing enterprise actually sucks cash. It's counterintuitive. You're like, well, I don't understand. I'm making more money. How do I have less cash? Because growth sucks cash, and it's counterintuitive. But it wasn't until I really understood that and why that's happening, especially in an inflationary environment, I didn't understand what the dynamics of that were. Once I started to understand the dynamics, then I could actually start to fix that. So that's going to be the real golden cherry on top for today's session. And then we're going to talk about some resources here at the end. These here are all the books that I have written. I'm not here to promote all of those things. I'm just letting you know that the main book that we're going to be talking about is what's in this book today, The Time Wealthy Advantage. If you're interested and you're outside the US, you can buy it on Amazon. I don't make a lot of money on books. If you've ever written books and sold books, you know you have to sell a lot to really make a difference. Just letting you know, if you'd like to get a copy and you're outside the US, you're best to get it on Amazon. If you'd like a signed copy and you're in the US, go to strategicboardroom.com. It's the one that's scrolling across the bottom. And oh, I gotta fix my banner. Oh man, who's manning the ship on this thing? That would be me. So let's fix that really quickly, because today's session is not the business growth multiplier. Today's session is financial literacy for business owners. There we go. Now it's right. Okay, very good. So if you go to the strategicboardroom.com, you'll see where you can purchase this right in the front of the page. It's on the main page. You cannot miss it. It's like there's a button that says buy book. And I can sign it and send it to you, and we'll go from there. All right, so let's get to the Viper framework. The Viper framework is an acronym, and what this is a strategic approach to setting up a business. So for those of you who have a business already, you're going to look at the Viper framework to make sure that you've got all the functions that you've considered. Because chances are, if you've got some dysfunction going on in your business, it's probably because you have some of these things that are missing, and that's okay. Whenever I get hired as a strategist, or sometimes as a fractional CSO, which means that they're hiring me on a fractional basis. I'm not an employee. They're basically hiring me as a consultant, and I'm a chief strategic officer. So I'm working with the C-suite of individuals. from, larger-ish organizations. And I say larger-ish, meaning they're still small businesses, but they might have 30, 40, 50 employees. And I'm working directly with this C-suite because, and anytime I do, I notice that there's missing pieces here. So that's kind of what that's why I'm bringing this up now, because again, we're taking a strategic approach, a top-down approach to look at your businesses, and then we're going to look at the finances. So this will make sense here in just a little bit. So when we're looking at the Viper framework, we're looking at, again, it's an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And when you're looking at your business from a top-down perspective, that's going to make a heck of a lot more sense, because now you're not going to try to like, oh, I learned this one tactic and I'm going to try to bolt that onto my business somehow, even if it doesn't necessarily fit. That's why a top-down approach is always, in my mind, more superior, because you're setting and maintaining a strategy. So this is really, really important. So let's get into some of the nuances and some of the basics, the basic functions of the Viper framework. First is foremost is vision. Vision is made up of two parts. Vision is made up of personal vision and business vision. So when you're looking at personal vision, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, okay, what do you want in life? What do you want your life to look like? So if you're sitting here and I'm saying, okay, well, Cecilia, where do you want to go in life? Okay, so Cecilia's got I'm also majoring in business administration. I'm working I'm assuming you're working on your associates now. Very good. And that's fantastic. And I don't know if I should get my bachelor's. Listen, I'm going to tell you that all like right now, I'm back in school. I'm actually pursuing my PhD in organizational psychology. And that, like, I don't need necessarily, I'm not going to get anything extra to doing this. I'm not like going out and looking for a job, but I do appreciate the education. So for me, I read a lot. I read 42 books last year. I read 41 books the year before that. I track all of those books. I study a lot. So whether you choose to go into that type of study, where it's specifically in university settings or otherwise, listen, always continue to educate yourself. I don't really care, as long as it's something that is relevant to your field, and even some of the stuff that's not relevant to your field, it adds to what's known as your requisite variety of knowledge. Requisite variety. So when you're adding to your requisite variety, and this is going off script a little bit, but when you're adding to your requisite variety of knowledge, now you can handle and solve more sophisticated problems. So there was something called, I'm completely off script here, but there's someone known as, I think his name was Ross Ashby, and he came up with this concept of Ashby's law of requisite variety. And what he premised was that a problem could not be solved by a solution that was less simple, or that was more simple than the actual problem. So you needed a more complex system to solve a complex problem. And that is why I'm always adding to the requisite variety of knowledge, because certain things that I might pick up from the marketing area of the world might help me solve a problem in production. And something I learn in sales might actually help me something related to accounting, and so forth and so on. So this is why I have added to my requisite variety of knowledge in the 4 core functions of business, which are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. We'll talk about the 4 core functions here in just a little bit. So when we're talking about the personal vision, and this is, again, this is so important. Like, let's say for argument's sake, Cecilia says she's, where do you want to go in life, Cecilia? That's your personal vision. What if your job description wasn't your life description? Shaq, what if your job description wasn't your life description? What you do for money, Rebecca, what you do for money, Donna, doesn't have anything to do with who you are as a human being. Stands to reason. So that's why I'm saying, like, I want your personal vision to be like, okay, if you woke up with $30 million or 30 million pounds or 30 million euros, whatever is a lot of money, you wake up with that in your bank account tomorrow and you go buy all the bougie stuff that you want to buy, fine. What does your life look like after that? Okay, then you're going to construct a business vision. And it's like, great, that's where we want to go in my personal vision, my personal life, my personal relationships, my personal faith, my personal wellness. Now, what's my business vision? How are we going to get there? Right? And I know a lot of people, especially in financial literacy, we're talking like, hey, isn't this about financial literacy? Yeah. The problem is that so many folks who I have sat next to in conferences and seminars and masterminds, and they are crushing it. They're making 6 and 7 figures a month, like net. And you know what they're worried about? Even though their life at home is a disaster and they don't know their kids and they haven't spoken to their spouse in a real deep, meaningful conversation in weeks or months, you know what they're more worried about? An extra comma in their bank account. That's what they were worried about. And the reason why is because they've sacrificed and put everything into this business vision. So again, the danger in putting a business vision in place before you create a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And most people just want more money, but then they get this more money and they don't have anything to spend it on. They're like, well, I can find things to spend it on. Fine. You can only drive so much in a fancy car. You can only dine out so much. You can only play so much golf. That's what I'm saying. This is about having that personal vision. I'm 53 years old and it took me a long time to figure this out. There's no way you were going to tell me this when I was in my 20s. I was like, yeah. Let me make that 50 grand a month and then I'll figure it out. Unfortunately, I was winding up that same path along those other people. I have an amazing life now. And a little bit ago, I was hanging out on the couch with our 3-year-old daughter, and she was wanting to read a book, and we just sat and had lunch, and she just giggled and played and did all the things, and then we played Dinosaur Show, and I don't even know the rules of that, but a 3.5-year-old makes total sense. But that is part of my personal vision. So I'm just saying, please, and again, I'm going to make one last final point here on personal vision, and then we'll move on to the financial stuff. So I promise you we are going to talk about business stuff. But I just want to make this one point here because I see so many people who's got faulty wiring when it comes to not having a personal vision and sacrificing everything for a business or a career vision. So the personal vision, one thing I like to consider is come up with a 100th birthday speech. So let's say you're turning 100 years old. Okay, Shaq, you're turning 100 years old. Who would you want to be in the room? What would you say, right? Who would you want to be there and what would you say? And when you were done speaking, right, think about what would be the message that you would want people to carry outside the room when you were done speaking. That would be that starts to speak to legacy. And you might be thinking like, Shaq's like, dude, I'm like in my 20s. I can't think of me being, 75 years from now. Okay, fine. I respect that. What about your next milestone? What about like, hey, you're getting ready you're going to have a high school reunion in 5 or 6 years, or what? Maybe your kids are going to be turning 18 at some point. When is that? That might be a milestone for you. Maybe use that. It's because if you have that future self discontinuity, that might be more difficult for you to do that. Okay, I totally respect it. I totally get it. But again, take time to actually do the personal vision. All right, so moving on. We'll put the fries in the bag with personal vision. So now let's talk about the business vision. And there's 3 C's of business vision. And this is why your financial literacy is so important, because your finances are going to be a result, but they will also feed back into these 3 C's of business vision. And every single time I get hired as a strategist and I'm looking at these 3 C's because they've got some sort of employee dysfunction, they don't have enough leads coming in, the customers they do have are a total pain in the neck, they've got a lot of turnover, they got a lot of attrition, they've got poor product quality. They can't get anybody to show up on time, all the sorts of problems. Does this sound familiar at all if you're an employer? Or maybe you're working in a place and you're like, yeah, this is exactly what it is. It's because one of these 3 issues is off. Sometimes it's all 3. So let's get to the 3 C's of business vision. So when you're looking at 3 C's of business vision, it's core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. We're going to spend a few minutes on this. And I'm going to tell you it does relate directly to the financial literacy. So just hang in there, because if this is not healthy, you will not be financially healthy. I'm just letting you know that now. So let's get into core purpose. Core purpose is specifically what business are you in and what problems do you specifically solve. And it's important that you are really specific in your answers. If you just say, I'm in real estate, great. That tells me not much. That tells me, okay, are you in real estate? Well, where do you live? I live in Texas. Okay, so you do real estate in the entire state of Texas. I will tell you there are people who are really, really well, who are really, really successful, who do really, really well because they focus on one specific area, probably in Texas. And when I mean area, probably one school district within Texas. They're not trying to do the entire state of Texas. That would be insanity. Because you can't, every market is so localized, you can't possibly know. Or if you're in Dallas, you're just like, yep, I just work in Arlington. That's the only thing I do. I work in Arlington. Okay, I know where Arlington is. I respect that, right? So these are the sorts of things that you have to start to think about is specifically what business are you in and specifically what problems do you solve? And it's really important that you're highly specific in your answers, okay? So next is, and when you're defining that core purpose, it's going to be a lot easier for you to reach people because they're going to know what you're about. When I talk to a lot of different entrepreneurs, unfortunately, I get people who are like, oh yeah, I have all these different businesses. And every time you get out of the shower, you have a new business idea. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, I was the same way. And the problem was I was so fragmented in my purpose within my businesses. I just was all over the place. So you might think, well, yeah, it's not that you just have one problem that you solve. Think of a car mechanic. A car mechanic solves lots of different problems for passenger vehicles. Could they replace a headlight? Sure. Could they replace a taillight? Sure. Could they put brakes on the car? Sure. Right? They don't just work on the left headlight and that's it. Oh, that's all I do. I'm a left headlight technician. That's all I do. No. They work on all makes, all models, passenger rated vehicles. Could they work on a dump truck? Maybe, but probably not. Probably outside their core purpose. Could they work on a lawnmower? Maybe. But again, they probably couldn't charge enough where it'd be worth their while to do it. Make sense? So that's about core purpose. Let's get to core values. Core values is about what matters to you about this business, and think, how would the world be worse off if you went out of business? Now, the core values, and you might, you're saying, this is great. Okay, I agree. Great. Thank you. If you have if you want to expand on that, I'm happy to, but I'm glad it's great. So I'm glad you're great. So the core values are specifically about this is what formulates the DNA of the company. And you might be thinking, remember, your business is just an extension of you. So when you bring your core values, whatever your core values are, you're bringing those into the business. Think about that. And again, we bring a lot of values from our personal lives into the business. So we value lots of different things as human beings. We have lots of different values, but the core values are a little bit different. They're a little bit more special. And I'll give you an example. A value is something that's like, okay, yeah, I value that. But a core value is something that you're willing to act on. Like if someone broke in my office right now and said, give me your peanut M&Ms. Actually, I'm out of peanut M&Ms now that I think about it. But if someone came in here and I, assuming I had peanut M&Ms, and they were like, give me your peanut M&Ms, and they were threatening me, and I'm like, dude, take the peanut M&Ms. I'm not going to go to war over peanut M&Ms. Someone broke into my house and threatened my family, I'm meeting them with war. Like, it's going to be bad for them, right? Because that's a core value of mine, is the safety and security of my family. That is a core value. So a core value is a value that you're willing to act upon it. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, that's great in concept. How does that work in actual theory? Or that's great in theory, but how does it work in practice? So the way it works in practice is, let me ask you this. Has anyone ever lost a friend, or maybe it was even someone that you were in a romantic relationship with, that they were heading down a path that you couldn't follow? Anybody know someone like that? I've lost many friends like that because they were heading down a path that I was not willing to follow, because they were violating a core value of mine, because they were outside of they were wandering off the reservation. And I was like, nope, I'm sorry. I am not following you down that path. It sucked. It broke my heart, but I couldn't do it. And the reason for that is because it violated a core value. So that's how you learn about the excesses in your life. The excesses in your life, the excessively good, the excessively bad, and you say, okay, so what are if there was an event in your life that if you could revisit this moment in your life, what was that? What could that be? That might represent a core value of yours. What about something where it was excessively bad? Why was it so bad? Because it probably violated a core value of yours. So use those experiences to help determine what your core values are, and then you're going to identify them in your business. Why is that? Because you don't want to wind up creating a business that's not in alignment with your core values, because you'll hate it. Has anybody ever worked for a miserable boss that did not align with your core values, or a miserable company that did not align with your core values? I have. And every Sunday around 4:30, it was like clockwork. This creeping dread feeling came over me, like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to that place tomorrow. And it just ruined the entire Sunday afternoon. So I'm just saying these core values are so important. And the reason why is because they determine your company culture. And your company culture and your company brand are inextricably linked. Your company culture is what's experienced by the people inside your organization. The company brand is what's experienced by the people outside the organization. So please take time to identify and really define what these core values are. So, let's see. Cecilia saying for me was having a lack of backbone. Was that a manager that had a lack of backbone? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I understand. Yep, I totally get it. It stinks, right? If someone's not in alignment with your core values. And again, when you have your alignment in your core values, that's when you start attracting the people to your organization who are in alignment with your core values. And again, I have people who sign up for these classes, they come on for a few minutes, they hate my face and they leave and I never hear from them again. It's okay because they're probably not aligned with my core values, but the people who are, they become my raving fanatics. They love what I'm about. We align, they jive with my tribe and we get along well, right? That's because of a core value alignment. So let's talk about the client avatar, because that's what's next. So once you've identified the core purpose of your organization, the core values of your organization, now you're going to start attracting this client avatar. And this is specifically and ideally who you want to serve. These are like the people like, oh my gosh, these are the people like these are my tribe. These are the people that I really want to be with. I really like working with married couples. They tend to be Christian, but not always, but they tend to have faith. Faith plays a big role for them in their life. So they tend to have faith. They are business owners. They tend to be married. They tend to have kids at home, and they are swamped busy, and they don't even have time for date night. And if they did have time for date night, guess what? It turns into a board meeting. So those are the people who I ideally and specifically like to serve. And I would say to you that you need to break them down geographically, demographically, and psychographically. Now, if they don't check all of those boxes, does it mean I won't work with them? No, not necessarily. But if it's like, if it's like 3 out of the 6, they might be a better client for someone else. So again, I would rather be a satisfied customer of someone else than a dissatisfied customer of mine. So, but this is also important why you to identify your core purpose. It's also important why you identify your core values. And the client avatar should be also identified geographically, demographically, and psychographically. So when you're thinking of geographic, this is straightforward. It's where they are, where they at in the world. Demographics is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Do they have kids? Do they have no kids? Are they wealthy? Are they poor? Are they middle class? Whatever. And then finally, a psychographic. Psychographics is how they think and how they buy. So when you're thinking about this, again, and this is also going to be so important when you're spending your advertising dollars in the financial side of things. It's like, okay, I really want to be spending my money, but do I want to spend my money attracting people that are not going to buy from me? No. You want to spend your money on people who are more like you, people who are in alignment with that client, that core purpose, that client avatar, right? Those core values. You want those all things to be in alignment. And the psychographics helps you find these folks. So when you're defining psychographics, think ALIA, ALIA. And that's their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. So when you know this and you start spending money on advertising, think about it. What's their attitude? Their attitude towards your product or service. It's like, maybe you represent an industry that where there's a negative connotation to that industry, right? I don't want to presuppose anything, but let's say like attorneys have a bad, a lot of times they have a well-deserved, sometimes bad rap, but hey, I'm an attorney who actually cares about human beings. Okay, right? So think about what their attitudes might be towards attorneys, or think of what their attitudes might be, towards, different businesses that is important to you. So, for me not defending myself. Oh, gotcha. Okay. This is going to be really important, as you're defining these things, which are really going to be important core values for you. But when you're defining the psychographics of the individuals, think of their attitudes, think of their lifestyle. Are they young and flying all the time? Are they jet setting? Are they kind of stick at home or homebodies? Do they spend a lot of time on social media? What are their interests? Do they like American football? Do they like European football? Do they like NASCAR? Or do they like Formula One? right? Think of their interests. And when you know their interests, it's helpful for you to get in front of them. That's important. Think of their aspirations and their goals. If you know their goals, if you know what they're aspiring to, it's a lot easier for you to reach them in your marketing. And your ad dollars are going to be far more effective. You're not just throwing money out there and seeing what sticks. You're being very intentional. So those are the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And that is the vision component, personal vision and business vision. We're going to pick up the speed and go a little faster through this because the rest of this is important. But like, think about like infrastructure, the vision, the vision methodology, the vision framework. Is the infrastructure is something you're going to have to spend money on. And infrastructure, think of infrastructure like the bones of the business. It's the desks, the chairs, the software, websites, payment processing systems, things like that. And it's a really, really critical component of your business. So your infrastructure, again, when you're looking at that, after infrastructure comes process. Process is how you do stuff. It's, from a process perspective, there's a tactical component and there's a strategic component. Tactical is just basically how you do stuff from day to day, right? It's the how you do stuff from like opening procedures, closing procedures. That's your standard operating procedures. How do you prepare bank deposits, things like that. How do you answer the phone? It's your day-to-day tactical activities. When it comes to strategic planning, in that sort of, from that context, this is about, okay, so like the infrastructure and the tactical part of the process, that's your system. That's like the boat that you just built. And now strategic planning is going to take it out of the harbor. That way, you're going to drive your business in a very specific direction. Otherwise, you're just going to leave your boat moored to the harbor and it's going to get battered around by whatever economic conditions happen to be blowing around at the time. No, I want to take my boat out into the open ocean and go catch some fish or go make some trouble. Whatever it is my plan is for that boat, whatever my plan is for that business. So in terms of strategic planning, you also need people, purpose, and promotion. The people are who you're going to need. You're obviously going to be attracting people because they're going to be the buyers of your organization, which is what? That's your ideal client avatar. That's what we talked about in the 3 C's of business vision, right? That's your people that you're going to attract, but it's also people you're going to need to help you inside your organization. Guess what? People are going to be your largest expense almost always in any business. So it's important that you pick and select these people well and pick them in alignment with your core values. Then you're going to be talking about your purpose. What's the purpose of the strategic plan? So when you're actually planning this strategic purpose, you're actually planning in a direction that is also in alignment with your core purpose. You see how this is starting to come back around? That is why. So when you're doing this strategic purpose, you might be thinking, well, maybe I'm looking to grow my market share. Maybe I'm looking to expand a new product or service, or maybe I'm just looking to launch into a completely different market altogether. Okay, fine. What is the purpose? But knowing your strategic purpose and keeping it in alignment with your core purpose also helps keep you from engaging in shiny object syndrome, where every time you get out of the shower, you have a new idea for your business, but it's not necessarily in alignment with your core purpose. This would be, think if like Starbucks started selling chainsaws. That makes absolutely no sense. But if you're a mechanic and you started doing muffler repair or swapping out mufflers when you already do brakes, can you do that? Yeah, you probably could do that because it's still in alignment with your core purpose. The last piece is promotion. Promotion is just saying things and saying things a lot. And so when you're being promotive, it's not just promotion to your exterior avatar that you're attracting, but it's also promoting it and telling the same story over and over and over again, the same story, promoting the same story over and over and over again to the people inside your organization, because they need to hear it multiple times, especially if you are a type of leader who comes up with the idea of the minute and then shares it with your people because you don't have discernment. Ask me how I know. I used to do that all the time and it would drive them all nuts. And they're like, okay, are we going to implement this idea or the 19 ideas that you came up with yesterday? So this is where you have to be promotive and also promote that same idea over and over and over. Okay. So that is the process part. Execution. Listen, a good plan violently executed now is way better than a perfect plan executed next week. This was quoted by General George S. Patton, an American general in World War II. But the reason why I have execution up as part of the Viper framework is because most plans fall apart in execution. And the reason for that is because you have too many priorities, and having too many priorities has the same impact as having none. So this is why I come up with the Daily 5 framework. The Daily 5 is up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take that are going to move the needle towards your vision or your strategic plan, either one. Okay. So that is the execution component. And then the last component is reporting. Reporting is just around either lead metrics or lag metrics. Lead metrics are based on your actions and activities. You're just measuring your actions and activities. That's it. The lag metrics are the results of those actions and activities. So if you don't get the results you want, guess what? You just measure your actions and activities, or you adjust those. Okay. So that is the entire Viper framework. So that is the top-down component. So let's get to the 4 core functions of business. And the 4 core functions of business, these have to be true in every single business. And these 4 functions are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey through your business happens in that order. They first experience your lead generation, then the sale gets closed, they get handed off to fulfillment and operations, and then finally the accounting, where the money gets collected and the bills get paid. So when you're looking at this, everything needs to support your lead generation function. I'm saying this now because even though this is a financial literacy course, you have to understand that everything has to function, that has to support that lead generation function. Otherwise, you're out of business. And if you're always out there and don't keep your foot on the gas when it comes to lead generation, it only takes 1 or 2 months for you to be out of business. And the truth is, you can have the best, most efficient business, the best product, the best service. You can be an absolute paragon of truth, justice, and virtue. Your sales technique so dialed in, you can sell ice to Eskimos and voting booze to Castro, and you can still starve. That's the truth. So you can never take your foot off the gas when it comes to lead generation. And that comes by being supported by the finance function. So when it comes to sales just continues the conversation that was started by the lead generation function. It understands that effective selling is just about finding solutions and not holding people's heads underwater until they say yes. And generally in the operational function, if you're going to get stuck, this is generally where you get stuck. You get stuck building the roofs. You get stuck making the websites. You get stuck doing the bookkeeping. Whatever the thing is, whatever the product or service is that you do, that's tend to where a lot of people tend to get stuck. So if you are profitable enough, you can start hiring your replacements. And you have to have profits. Profits are not a dirty word. You just need to make sure that your profits are high enough so you can fire yourself from these jobs and hand it off to someone else. In the accounting function, if you're generally going to ignore something, it's usually the accounting function that gets ignored. And it usually goes something like this. Well, I've got more money in my bank account this month than last month. I must be doing okay. And that is how companies can grow broke. They're growing, but then all of a sudden they start realizing, where's all my cash? And they're not realizing that their cash is actually funding that growth, and now they're having problems. So the accounting function, listen, it is absolutely critical. It's the fourth leg of the table. The accounting function collects the money. The accounting function pays the bills. The accounting function tracks and measures everything that happened within the organization, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it also forecasts and budgets and plans for what will happen. And that is so critical. So you're not just driving that speedboat in the fog. And now let me just ask you something. Are all of these things the same skill set? The lead generation, the sales, the operations, and the accounting, are they all the same skills? No, obviously not. And that is why most business owners ignore 1.5 of them. They do the lead generation when they have time, and then when someone shows up, they'll sell, and then they do the fulfillment, and then they completely ignore the accounting function. Ask me how I know. That's how I operated for years. So once you take the Viper framework, you look through that lens of the Viper framework through all of the 4 core functions of business. What is your infrastructure and your process for each of the 4 core functions? Now I want you to start to think about how the financial statements actually will be impacted by all 4 functions of this business. So when you're looking at financial statements, this is so incredibly critical. There's 2 main financial statements. You've got your balance sheet and you've got your income statement and P&L. If you have heard of a P&L, or a profit and loss, or an income statement, All three of those things are the same thing. They're the same thing. They're just different vernacular for the same exact thing. So the balance sheet and the income statement, I'm more of an accounting purist just because that's my background. But if I say P&L, or if I say profit and loss, or if I say income statement, those all three are the same thing. So the balance sheet, now they do serve different purposes. The balance sheet is a sheet of all the balances in your business. What's the balance in your checking account? What's the balance that's due to you from your customers? What's the balance due that you owe to your credit cards? That's it. It's a sheet of balances. That's all it is. And it's broken up into three main areas. It's broken up by assets, which is what you own. It's broken up by liabilities, which is what is owed to other people. And the difference between the assets and the liabilities is equity, and that's what it's worth on paper. So conceptually, if you sold all the assets, paid off all the liabilities, whatever will be remaining is your equity. Make sense? So now you've got, so the one main thing I just want you to understand is from a balance sheet perspective, this is a snapshot in time. So in other words, if you think of, again, the things that you own. So again, it's balances. So if you have a checking account, you might have $5,000 in your checking account today. You might, at the beginning of the day, you might owe $3,000 on a credit card. Okay, fine. So at the beginning of the day, you have a balance sheet, which is going to, there we go. So at the beginning of the day, you might have your balances may adjust. So if you pull a balance, especially if you're paying bills or someone comes in and gives you money, that could change. So your balance sheet from the beginning of the day could be different from your balance sheet to the end of the day. Makes sense? Because you've got money going in and money going out. So understand that a balance sheet is a snapshot in time, and it just depends on when you've actually taken it. Now, generally, most people, when they run an income statement, which is over a period of time, they'll tie a balance sheet to the end of that period because that's what makes the most sense, right? It'll make more sense here in a second. So the income statement is again, this is over a period of time, and the income statement is just about the income that you've got. So it's made up of three things as well. It's made up of your revenues, which is what your sales are. So if you buy this mug or you sell this mug for $10, and $10 would be my revenues. Okay. If it cost me $7 to make it, that would be an expense item, right? So that would also show up on my income statement. So you got revenues, you got expenses, and revenues minus expenses is your net profit. So if I've sold this mug for $10, that's my revenues. It takes me $7 to make the mug. I have a profit of $3. So revenues minus expenses equals your net income. So let's get to some balance sheet examples. I'm going to take my mug down. Oh, how do I do this? All right, I'll take it down there. Okay, so you can still see me, the tiny version of me down here. So the balance sheet, this is excerpted actually out of the Time Wealthy Advantage book on page 265. So if you do have that book, you can open it up and follow along, or not, you can just follow along on the screen. But this is an example balance sheet. So the balance sheet is, again, you've got your assets at the top, your liabilities at the bottom, and then your total equity, which is your assets minus the liabilities. So let's get to it. So we're going to talk about the assets at the top, at the top of the balance sheet first. So again, these are just the balances. So this is the balance at the end of the period, and the amount in the checking account is $10,350. I've got accounts receivable, which is the amount of money that my customers owe me of $101,275. I've got vehicles in the amount of, now the vehicle is based on the purchase price of $29,970. So for some of you might be saying, well, what if it's worth less now because I've owned it since 2019? Yeah, it will be worth less. And there'd be an additional line item on there called accumulated depreciation. I did not put that on there because I'm just trying to keep this nice and simple. Okay. What you do is you put that on there at what's called book value, meaning the purchase price, not like Kelly Blue Book value or what the thing is worth, but specifically what you purchase it at. That follows along with what's known as generally accepted accounting principles. It's known as GAAP, GAAP. So that would be following GAAP. So for those of you who may be watching this, who live in a different country, I get quite a few people who do. This all follows, whether it's dollars, Australian dollars, euros, whatever, it is all follows generally accepted accounting principles. So then you'll see that I have real estate, which also is valued at $275,500. That is also listed at book value. So you'll notice, if you might notice, that these are listed in order of most liquid, meaning most convertible to cash, to least convertible to cash, right? So could I convert my real estate warehouse to cash? Sure, I'd have to sell it. I'd have to find a buyer. It could take months, potentially even years for me to convert that to cash. Whereas the cash in my checking account, I can just write a check for it, or I can go down to the bank and I could walk out with $10,350 in cash. So how quickly can I get to cash? So most liquid to least liquid, that's how these things are organized in the assets section of the balance sheet. So my total assets are $417,000 and change. All right, so that's the assets. Let's look at liabilities. Liabilities are what you owe to others. So again, this is at the end of the period, and this is what this is what you owe to others. So you have a credit card balance at the end of the period of $34,760. You owe vendors, right? So remember, accounts receivable is what people owe you. Accounts payable is what you owe to others. So let's say that you have $37,500 worth of vendor materials that you owe your vendors. Let's say it's suppliers or something like that. You have a van loan from Wells Fargo that you only owe $11,570. And then at Citibank, you have a real estate mortgage in the amount of $105,350. So your total liabilities, your total liabilities added up are $189,180. And you see that equity at the bottom, that's when you take your assets. What was that? $417,000 minus the $189. That's what it would be worth on paper, $228,000 in total equity. Okay, so that is the assets. That is the assets, the liabilities, the equity. That is your balance sheet. So again, it is a sheet of balances. That's all it is. Don't make it more complex than that. So let's look at the income statement. Remember, the income statement, if the balance sheet was a snapshot in time, the income statement is just a period of time. Generally, 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year. Those are pretty typical periods of time that people run income statements. Okay. And then generally you have the balance sheet that would be the end of that. So in other words, if I ran an income statement for, let's say, March 1st to March 31st, I would have a balance sheet on March 31st. That would basically match up with the end of the income statement period. So that's generally how they match up. So when you're looking at income statements or P&L, profit and loss, again, same thing. You're looking at revenues, which are your sales. You're looking at the expenses, which is the amount of money you paid out during that period of time. And then you've got your net income, which is your profit, or net loss if your expenses were higher than your revenues. So let's look at this. So now from the income statement perspective, we got revenues at top, expenses in the middle, net income at the bottom. All right, let's look at revenues. So revenues, you'll see I've got them broken out between product sales and service sales. And my total sales are $114,000. You might think, well, why do I want those broken out between my product sales and my service sales? Well, service would be like what I do for folks, right? If I'm a plumber, I might have I have a plumbing guy who does my plumbing things, and he also sells me things while, for when he's doing my plumbing things. So when he sells me stuff, that goes into product sales. When he does stuff for me, that goes into service sales. And I have those broken out into 2 different categories. When you're looking at expenses, again, those are also broken out into different categories. So you're looking at your raw materials, which would be, again, if you're a plumber, this is you buying all your copper. So you paid $34,000 in that month for your copper, as an example. You paid insurance for that month of $5,150. You paid out interest for $2,450, commissions maybe to your salespeople, wages $44,000. Okay, for $45,000 in your wages. Those are what you're paying out to your employees in terms of wages, right? So your total expenses are $96,000. Your net income, what was the net income? 117. Yeah, 114. Okay, so 114 minus 96 is your net income is 17,000. All right, so that is your income statement. If you've got any questions along the way, make sure you're asking them, and I'll come back to them and ask them. But you might say, okay, what does this mean? Why does this matter? What does this have to do with the price of tomatoes? Okay, well, those are your basics of financial statements. And again, it's just about rules. So you might be thinking, okay, so what does knowing this stuff do for me? I'm glad you asked. I'd be happy to tell you. So let's get to it. You might be thinking, okay, where is all my cash going? Because as I'm growing, I have less and less cash. I feel like I'm struggling more because I've started growing my business. Well, this is where you're starting to engage in growth planning. This is why it's important for you to have a clean set of financial statements, a clean balance sheet, a clean income statement when you're doing all this stuff, because you cannot be strategic if you do not know your numbers. And this is what will also help you from growing broke. Because again, remember what I said, a growing enterprise needs cash to do that. And even though it might be generating more cash, it's actually using that cash to fund more growth. So I'm just saying, this is where you are growing broke if you're not careful. So there's 3 key metrics that I'm going to be talking to you about over the next few minutes, and then we'll land the plane. The first is going to be called profit margin percentage. The next is cash balance history. And the last is the cash as a percentage of sales. Listen, if you can operate a 4-function calculator, meaning add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you can do this. You can do this. So for those of you who are like, oh man, I'm starting to get a little itchy, relax. I will metaphorically hold your hand. It won't be weird. It might be a little weird, but just say, I'm going to be with you. This will not be difficult. So again, I'm going to show you exactly how to do the calculations. And again, you'll get this on replay so you can start thinking and acting a little bit more strategically with your numbers. So first, let's get to profit margin percentage. When you're looking at profit margin percentage, I'm going to take myself down again so you can see the full income statement here. But you're looking at the income statement. I want you to look at that column on the right. You see those percentages that are on the right? I didn't mention anything about them yet. Now I'm going to tell you what those things are. So when you're looking at the income statement, let's say look at the top function there. Remember the product sales and the service sales? So you had product sales of 75,000, which was 65.8% of total sales. Right? So divide 75,000 by 114, that's 65.8% of sales. And your service sales is 39,000, which is 34.2% of sales. Why do you do that? Well, I'll tell you, because when the numbers go up or down, it's really hard to figure out if you're not using a standard that is based on a percentage. So in other words, let's say that your total sales went to 150,000 and your product sales went to 110,000. Is that good or bad? It's not inherently good or bad. It's just, if you know you have higher margins in your products, like let's say that you have a 300% markup in your products, but you only have a 70% markup in your service, then wouldn't it make sense that you want to expand your product sales as much as you possibly could? Yeah, it stands to reason. So all I'm saying is that's why it's so important for you to know that breakdown in total sales, because then you from month to month, you can track those differences. So in other words, again, if total sales went up to 150,000 and product sales went up to 110,000, well, let's do the math real fast. So my calculator will work. Yeah, I'm not doing that math in my head. I know better than that. So in that particular case, let's see, I've got 150,000 divided by 110. Oops, sorry, 110 divided by 150. So that'd be 73%. So yeah, so my product sales actually increased as a percentage of sales. It actually went to 73% instead of just 65.8%. So yeah, so if my product sales had a higher margins, yeah, then I could expect to be more profitable. So this is why that's so important. And this is such a valuable tool to learn. This is the stuff that CFOs are doing, chief financial officers are doing. Okay. So, let's see. My connection is jumping around, keeps cutting off. Sorry. If you are having issues with the connection, I know sometimes logging off and logging back in does help. So, hi, Monish. Good to see you. All right. So this is where we're looking at the percentage of sales method. This is called the percentage of sales method, by the way. So if you're looking at this again on the right hand side, when you're looking at that net income, look at the bottom there. I'm going to circle that little 15.5%. That means your net profit margin percentage is 15.5%. That means you get to keep, out of every dollar, you get to keep 15 cents out of every dollar that you sell. Make sense? Okay. So this is such an important consideration right here, is that when people, you have to pay attention to your profit margin percentage, and you have to be on that like a flipping band-aid. So let's use this very simple example. Let's pretend that you've got revenues of $10, you've got expenses of $8, and you have a net profit of $2. Okay, so 2 divided by 10 is a net profit margin percentage of 20%. It's pretty straightforward. Now let's pretend that your costs go up by $1. Okay, so your costs go up by $1, and you're like, well, I still want to maintain my net profit of $2, so I'm going to raise my prices $1. Okay, makes sense. So this is what you do. So you go from expenses of $9 to $11. You still get the same net profit of $2, but what happened to your profit margin percentage? Your profit margin percentage went down, didn't it? Yes. Your business is now less efficient at making and keeping dollars. This is how a company grows broke, because you cannot buy the same amount of things with that $2, because the $2 is now worth less because, again, of inflation or whatever. But because you didn't raise your pricing enough, this is a problem. And this is especially a problem with people who they feel icky, like they don't like to, I don't like to charge people too much. I have a bad relationship with money. I never really had money. This is where I'm telling you that personal psychology comes into the play with your organization. Remember, the things that you bring from your personal life, you bring into your business. Remember, I talked about that way back in core values. This is where it shows up. Okay. So what should you do in this scenario is actually raise your pricing to $1.25. So you raise your prices by $1.25 to $11.25. Your expenses remain at $9. Okay, so your prices go up $1, your expenses go up $1. You raise your price $1.25, and that maintains your net profit margin percentage of 20%. But look what happened to your net profit. Your net profit actually goes to $2.25. This is exactly why companies do well, especially publicly traded companies do really well in periods of inflation, because their pricing always goes up. These are masters at raising prices, and they do it in very tricky ways by lowering product volume, selling bigger packaging, whatever. They have a way of doing it, and man, they are masters at it. So I'm just saying, this right here, if you get nothing else from today, please watch your profit margin percentage, and you've got to be on that like a disease, because I'm telling you, this is the one way that people will grow broke and they don't even realize it. Okay. So let's move on. So that's the 20% there. So let's get on to the remaining part of this, which is, we talked about profit margin percentage. Let's talk about cash balance history, and then we'll talk about cash as a percentage of sales. So cash balance history is just that. It's not anything super crazy. I just want you to know, I want you to keep a spreadsheet of your cash balances every month, every day. And it's like, well, I log in and check it every day. Look, checking your balances and tracking your balances is two completely different standards. Tracking your balances is where you're looking at this and saying, oh yeah, I can see the trend from January to February, and from February to March. If you're just logging in and checking it every day, that's like you checking your weight every 15 minutes throughout the day. It doesn't make any sense, and especially if you're not writing any of it down. So this is about keeping a simple spreadsheet about knowing what your cash balances were so you can track your cash. And I'm telling you, most businesses and most business owners do not have near enough cash on their balance sheet. They just don't. They spend it. They're not good stewards of it. So I'm just telling you, like, the companies that were tracked in the book Great by Choice by Jim Collins and Morton Hansen, phenomenal book, Great by Choice by Jim Collins and Morton Hansen. That they tracked 16 different companies, and the ones that did really, really well were the ones that had anywhere from 3 to 10 times more cash on their balance sheet, because it allowed them to take advantage of good luck events when they came along, and it also allowed them to weather bad luck events when they came along. And they didn't have to lean on, I'm using air quotes here, credit cards and really expensive debt. That is the thing that will kill a small company. And it's not because of the interest, it's because the payments are so high. So I'm just saying, like, $1,000 borrowed from a mortgage versus $1,000 borrowed from a credit card, the payments are very different. It's roughly $8 per thousand in a 30-year mortgage. It's roughly $30 per thousand on a credit card. So people think the problem with credit cards is because the interest is so high. No, the problem with credit cards is because the payments are so high. That's the problem. And also because it's super easy to borrow. But that's what I'm saying. So you have to think about that when you're looking at the cash balance history. Okay. So tracking that. Now the next one is a little tricky. It's going to take a calculation. It's not hard. I promise. I'll be here the whole time. Okay. So let's look at this. So what we're doing is we're going to be doing something called a cash as a percentage of sales. Cash as a percentage of sales. So let me take myself down, put myself down at the bottom there. All right. So all you're going to do is you have to go to your balance sheet and you're going to get your cash at the end of the month. Okay. So you got your cash up there. That's your cash balance at the end of the month. Then you're going to go to your income statement and you're going to grab your total sales for the month. Okay. So all you're going to do is you're going to look at this as a function as a percentage. So you've got $10,000 worth of cash. Okay, let's go to the balance sheet again. So balance sheet, $10,350 in cash. You're going to get total sales of $114,000. Now, you're going to take 10,000 divided by 114, which equals 8.7%. Okay, now, is that good? Is it bad? I will tell you this. I'd be pretty damn nervous if I had a business making $114,000 in sales and only had $10,000 of cash at the end of the month. I'd be pretty nervous. But again, everybody's risk tolerance is different. But I'm just saying, I would not feel super comfortable with that. But what I am doing is I am tracking that. And I'm going to track that every darn month from January to February to March. Now, keep in mind, there is a function here that you have to understand. If sales are increasing and your cash balance is also increasing, that's good. If that would mean your cash as a percentage of sales should be outpacing your sales. And that's good. That's a healthy thing. But your cash as a percentage of sales could actually be increasing if your cash is staying the same, but your sales are declining, right? Because of the way the math works. So you have to understand what you're actually looking at. Just because you see the numbers going up doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. So this is why you have to look at things in their totality. You're not just going to go in and someone's going to say, oh, well, you got a fever, you're getting ready to die. What? That doesn't make any sense. Like, can you check other things? Right? Yeah, okay, well, you have a fever and you have this other issue, you have this other issue, you got lots of pain, right? There's other things going on. Okay, so you can't just look at these things in isolation, you have to look at them in their totality. Okay, so again, this is just a primer, just getting you used to looking at some metrics. But again, this is all about growth planning, and you cannot be strategic if you don't know your numbers, and this is how you're going to avoid growing broke. So what I want you to do, if you've got any questions, go ahead and type those questions in now. I'm happy to answer some questions because we are getting ready to land the plane. So put your seat backs up and then lock your tray tables and all the things. So I've got a question here. Whenever I deliver a service, I am always thinking not to be too expensive. I get why you're saying that, but what is expensive? Who's to determine what's expensive? Let's say that, and I don't know what your service is. It looks like you have a law practice there, okay? But let's say for argument's sake that because of your advice, and you'd say, well, I don't want to be too expensive, and I think that $10,000 is really expensive. Okay, I respect that. I may not agree with it, but I respect that. But what if your advice, let's say that your advice actually saved them $1 million. Would that $10,000 almost seem ridiculous? Like too low? Like they probably wouldn't even trust that you really knew what you were talking about? Yeah, and so price does come with some clout. Price does come with some credibility. If I came in here and said, well, yeah, I'm a strategist and I work for strategists, and I only charge them $100 a day, they'd be like, well, what kind of strategy, how good could you possibly be? Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. So these are the sorts of things when you start to price things, I don't want you bringing your preconceived notions about what expensive is. It's about the value you're bringing to the customer. Okay, so we're getting more into the sales arena right now, but you being not too expensive, that doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what is the value that you're bringing to the individual? What's the value that you're bringing to the organization? So if the value that you're bringing to the organization, if you could save them $100,000, wouldn't it make sense that you charge $40,000? Sure. They're still ahead by a lot. Okay? So this is why I'm saying you have to be careful about labeling things as too expensive, because expensive is in their mind, not yours. It does not belong in yours. Okay? So thank you for putting that up there. So Shaq, I try to present good, better, best options, and I respect that too. And I know we're not talking necessarily about financial literacy here. This is more about buying psychology. The good, better, best options, I do respect that, but a lot of times people are doing that, and I'm working with folks who want to do that good, better, best option. A lot of times they're doing that, but they're doing it because they don't feel good about their service. So what I would say is I would only present the best option first as my only option and see where it goes from there. That would be important salesmanship. And again, completely outside of the scope of today. But again, this is around lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. But again, this is why I would bring to my client, my avatar, I would propose the highest priced, the best value first. And then if it's like, well, it's not really not in my budget. Okay. Like, I'll give you an example. I have a school community, right? Where SKOOL. So people come in, they get some different training from me. The difference in price depends on how fast they want to go. If they want to go really fast, I have an option which is $549, and that's each month. And that means they get whatever training is in there, they get group calls, and they get me one-to-one. If they're not really ready to go that fast, I have a different priced option, which is $119 a month, which gets them one call with me per month. If they don't really, again, maybe they don't have the budget for it, maybe they're just kind of testing the waters, maybe they're just kind of thinking about starting a business, and they're just kind of learning things along the way, they get all the group calls and they get invited, but they don't get me at all. And they'll go slower, but that's only $39 a month. You see the difference? So how you present that is really important. If you're going to just say, well, this is good, this is better, this is best, but there's no real discerning features between what is the difference, then they're always going to pick the lowest price option. So just make sure that it's really clear about what is good, better, and best, the differences between them, and I would always present the highest price option first. That's just me. Okay? So hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. Cecilia's asking, what biggest mistake have you made with financial literacy when you first started out? Man, that is a good question. I love this question. Biggest, oh my gosh, I made so many. I'm going to give you two because there's two different things. One, the first was kind of what I just related to about having a bad relationship with money. Having a bad relationship with money is not a spreadsheet problem. It's a psychological problem. It's an emotional problem. And it would be like buying things that I didn't deserve yet, right? Or you're saying, or as a business owner, okay? I'm gonna answer them both the same way, okay? But when I had a bad relationship with money, and I was thinking, well, let me make $50,000 or $60,000, and then all my problems will be solved. And guess what? I made $50,000 or $60,000 in a month, and I would make that month over month, and I still had the same problems. Well, let me make $150,000 a month. And I did, and my problems did not change. So what was happening was because I had this bad relationship with money, meaning, and it's very indicative when things would show up, and this is something I'm going to be talking about in the boot camp, by the way, on the 21st. So this is the thing where when I had a bad relationship with money, things didn't matter how much money I made, I would turn around and it'd be gone. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? It didn't seem, it like, and even times when I was really trying to be really good about it, it would only take a couple of really stupid decisions for that money to go away. And really, that was probably one of the biggest things that really changed for me. I am I'm at the top of my game in a lot of different aspects of my life. And by outward appearances, you would not think so. Because the car I drive today is the worst car I have driven in probably 25 years. And I've been driving this car for probably 8 years. It's a 2010 HHR with 250,000 miles on it. Everything works. I just spent $4,000 putting new brakes and new suspension and everything else on it. But you know what? That car keeps me incredibly grounded. And when my last vehicle was a Ford Expedition, when that stopped working and it wasn't worth fixing, I was thinking, okay, cool, what am I going to drive? And I didn't really have time to go out. And I looked on my lot with my property management company. I was like, well, what car can I drive? They're like, well, that one. I'm like, why isn't anybody driving that one? And I'm like, well, because it smells like a wet dog Dorito foot. And I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. And it did. It smelled like a wet dog Dorito foot. And I drove it. It doesn't smell like that anymore. But that was my car, became my daily driver. And that car has kept me incredibly grounded. So can I afford something different? Absolutely, I can. In fact, my bride, she drives a significantly nicer vehicle than me. That's fine because she drives our daughter around. But I'm just telling you, for me, that's what keeps me grounded. So just saying, that's one of the things I wish I learned. The other thing is something known as a loan constant. And again, I'll get into the nuances of this in the boot camp, but really the basics of that is just what I talked about. So when I was not stacking enough cash. And this is a problem that what I would always do is I would like, okay, well, I knew credit cards were really expensive. So I was taking all my available cash and I was putting that extra cash away, but I was never saving or investing any other cash. Now, that became really problematic because I was never putting away other cash, not for a rainy day. Because if you validate something as a rainy day fund, you'll be amazed at how often it rains. But just for the sake of growing my cash so it starts to create and grow on itself as an appreciating asset. But no, what I was doing is taking all my available cash and always throwing it into my credit cards. And guess what? When I needed more spending capital, guess what I did? I went right back into my credit cards. I did not have any available bandwidth. I did not have any available cash on the side. And that really hurt me. It really, really hurt me. So not paying attention to my cash was probably one of the biggest things I learned in becoming financially literate. So there's a lot there to unpack. Really, really good question, but hopefully some of those answers helped you. And Shaq says, okay. All right. Very good. All right. So, the main success strategies here, look, you got to know your numbers and you have to track your numbers. There's just no getting around that. And those are the two main premises of that. So I'm going to share a quick story and then we're going to land the plane. This guy here, I like sharing the story because I just think it's so ridiculous. But this guy here, he's actually a bank robber in the 1990s. These two guys, MacArthur Williams and Clifton Earl Johnson, they robbed two banks with no attempt to disguise themselves. What they did is they actually covered their faces in lemon juice. Yeah, this is a real story. Because they thought that the lemon juice would make them invisible. Yeah, right. Invisible ink. Yeah, this is a true story. So these two researchers were so baffled by this that they couldn't believe and what they did is they came up with a study of how false confidence plays a role for people in all sorts of aspects, especially business owners. So everybody starts here at the very bottom where you have very low confidence and very low competence. You don't know very much. But very soon you're like, oh my gosh, how hard could it be? Let's rob some banks. Or hey, let's get into a business. How hard could it be? And your confidence spikes up really fast, right? Until you get to the peak of Mount Stupid. And that is where you start to realize, oh my gosh, this is harder than I thought. I don't know what I don't know. And that's when things come crashing down into the valley of despair. And all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, this sucks. I don't know what I don't know. But if you keep at it, if you start working on your competence and you start up that slope of enlightenment and you keep working on your knowledge, that's when you get to that plateau of sustainability. So that is, I just want to encourage you, that valley of despair is where a lot of business owners give up. And surely I have been there many, many times, been very, very frustrated. But I'm telling you, work on your competence, keep at it, keep growing, keep doing the things that you're doing, and that is going to help you avoid in getting out of that valley of despair. So having a support system is really important, and also keeping on your requisite variety of learning. So this is why I'm offering this Money and Finance Business Owner Bootcamp. This is the end of the session. I'm not going to be covering any new material, so if you want to hop off, you're welcome to. I just want to be talking, I'm here to talk about the Money and Finance Business Owner Bootcamp for anybody that might be interested. This is going to be a 3-hour session on Saturday, March 21st. If you sign up for it and you're not able to make it, that's totally fine. You will get the replay sent to you, and you will also get access to the Money and Finance Advanced course. In that course, it walks through all different aspects of money and finance as a business owner. I'm not going to teach you debits and credits. I'm not going to teach you how to set up a chart of accounts. You know why? Because you don't need to know that. Because you're not a bookkeeper. You hire a bookkeeper, or you hire someone else to do that stuff. Or even if you are doing that stuff yourself, at least you can understand what a balance sheet and an income statement is, and the relationship between the balance sheet and the income statement. So this is really, really important. And there's also other things about being, not just about being strategic, but being bankable. So what do I mean by bankable? Most business owners, they grow their businesses using their own personal debts, and they sign on for lots of personal loans. They use personal credit cards, and that is what they use to grow their business. I get it. I'm not here to tell you that that's wrong. I'm just telling you it's a really expensive way to grow your business. So most business owners, what they're trying to do is they're trying to learn how to borrow in the name of a business. And that's what I mean by being bankable. So being financially literate not only allows you to be strategic, like a battlefield general, but it also teaches you how to be bankable. So you can borrow in the name of your business. So learning how to be bankable, learning things like little phrases like EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's EBITDA. That's how bankers calculate. They'll use your income statement to figure out what EBITDA is, and that's what they're going to figure out how to give you a loan based on a DSCR loan, debt service coverage ratio loan. That's basically a commercial loan. So they're going to teach you, I'm going to teach you all that stuff in that course. We're going to be talking about some of this stuff in the boot camp. You're going to learn a lot of that stuff in the course. So again, if you're interested, I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. Not to mention there is a bunch of other videos that's in there related to where to park your cash, different things around loan constant, different aspects around different financial things, just so many different aspects of this. Plus you get all sorts of different downloads and templates and examples, so you can get in there and play with it and mess around and utilize whatever numbers that you want within those spreadsheets and calculators. So if you sign up for this today, it has to be today, and it has to be before midnight tonight, okay, that I will also give you a free one-to-one session with me, but it has to be tonight, okay? So I can tell when you sign up. If you sign up tonight, I will send you a link, and then you and I can hop on a free training session in addition to, as a bonus. So it is very inexpensive. It's like $39, I think, and it is on EventBrite. It'll be just like this. The training is just like this. So if you are interested in that, you are more than welcome to attend. Okay, so that is all I have. I don't see any other questions. Shaq, you are more than welcome. Thanks for sticking around. And okay, that's everything. I don't see any other questions. So I'm really excited about the boot camp. Hopefully I will see you guys there. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys in the boardroom. Take good care.